Hello, everyone. Welcome back again to another installment of the ACU Jiu Jitsu Club interview series, podcast series. I've got a couple guys that I know, a couple friends of mine, a couple members of the Jiu Jitsu community that I have been involved with in one way or another, or enjoy, or look up to, or talk to, or whatever. Feel like having a conversation with. And today we have someone that I know quite well. That is another one of my Rob Kahn, Gracie Tampa black belt brothers, Mr. Joe Bamboo Wissmann. I said your name right? Did I get it right? I forgot to ask.
Not even close. Wissman.
Wissmann. I knew I was going to screw that up. I knew there's no E. I knew I was going to fuck it up. I knew I was going to screw it up, but it's Wissmann. I apologize for that. I'm sorry for the disrespectful pronunciation. But today we're going to have a couple an interesting conversation because we always hear a lot of talk about Ghee versus Nogi. Guys like to Ghee, guys like Nogi. What's better this? What's better for that? And, there's a million different discussions to go down that road. I have my opinions. Everybody has their opinions. I kind of feel like jiu-jitsu, but whatever. That's just the way I feel about it. So we're having Joe on today in particular because Joe does not really care much for the Ghee. And if you see his gym, the majority of his classes are Nogi. I don't think you have any Ghee classes at your gym.
Yeah, 100% Nogi. I haven't done Ghee in years.
So, keeping that in mind, let's just spend a few minutes and kind of get into that. So first of all, tell us who you are, tell us about yourself, where you started training and blah blah blah.
So, my name's Bamboo. I've been forcefully called Bamboo since I started jiu-jitsu when I was 20, and I'm 37 now. I started with Eduardo, and when he first opened up in Tampa or St. Pete, I guess. And 2 years later, when Rob came down, I checked that out, ended up with Rob Kahn, and been doing jiu-jitsu ever since, really. Didn't take very long for me to pretty much know I wanted to do it full time. So, I was able to open up a school early on and been pretty successful. Been able to do it the entire time. So I've been pretty happy with it. But yeah, all I really do with my life is teach jiu-jitsu now, roll, and a little bit of MMA with a few fighters, but lately just jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, that's interesting too. I will get into that, but like the idea of you come back from an old school time. You're back from the days when there really wasn't much of a jiu-jitsu scene. It was either you were doing jiu-jitsu because you were going to try to be an MMA fighter. That was kind of like the natural segue. And I know Eduardo de Lima, when he came to Clearwater, he had a little more traditional jiu-jitsu style, but it still was, I imagine, when you first started, just like the majority of people that started after that second boom in about the early 2000s was all about, I'm going to be the next UFC fighter. Tell us a little bit about how jiu-jitsu has changed and how now you're able to say, look, you know what, screw this freaking MMA thing. There's actually a market to get people in to come train jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I mean, jiu-jitsu has evolved a ton for me and in many ways. I remember a few years in, I was pretty sure I'd seen all the moves. I realized that some people were better at them than me, but I didn't realize there were things that hadn't been discovered yet or that I didn't know about. And I still get my eyes open constantly. It's just impressive that there's always something else that seems simple that you never knew before. And now that there are so many different academies, so many black belts running schools, especially here in Florida, it's like a mecca. It's just so popular now for weight loss, self-defense, get in shape. It's a natural progression for wrestlers. It just seems like it's no longer like a niche market where there's not many people that want to try it. When I started, there was nobody that did jiu-jitsu. I only knew one person, the guy who told me to try it. That was it.
Right.
Nobody. Now, everybody watches UFC. I mean, everybody is at least aware of it. They know what it is. Everyone wants to try it, whether they've gotten around to it or not. So it's not a hard sell anymore to get someone to try jiu-jitsu. It's just a matter of not getting them injured and making them have fun. And, can you make them better? But it's awesome.
Yeah, I started about 2009 doing jiu-jitsu. And it hadn't really completely turned the corner to be kind of a family friendly. We were still was no intro program. It was still just you're here, you get your ass kicked and the strong survive type mentality. but what we've seen, so I can only imagine. I'm always curious about guys. I mean, you started what, like 2005-ish, something like that.
I think it was 2004, maybe 2003 at the very end.
Yeah. So you're right there when there was no put your arm around the new guy, walk him through lightly.
That I trained, Eduardo didn't speak English.
Right.
And I didn't speak Portuguese. I still don't. So he would try his best, but he'd be like, your right foot, your right foot grabs the shoe. I'm like, what? It made no sense to me. So when I finally, met Rob at Gracie Tampa, and he was an American who could speak English, and not only that, he was a very good teacher. It helped the learning so much. I think Rob influenced so much jiu-jitsu all over the U.S., but especially in this area.
Yeah.
It was just an amazing difference. I remember back in the day when no one had seen shoulder pressure. Now everyone acts like it's always been a thing and it's super obvious. But Rob made that, and now everyone else is agreeing with him. I remember how small it was, and there was only he was the baddest guy in Tampa, and that's just what it was. There wasn't even competition. Now there's a million schools. Most of them are from, him basically in some way or another. But yeah, it's everywhere now, and I freaking love it. It's awesome.
Yeah, Rob is without question, our head instructor, Rob Kahn, is without question one of the pioneers of jiu-jitsu in Central Florida. It's unquestionably in the Florida region. You can't throw a rock in this area and not find someone that either knows Rob or is directly related to the teachings that Rob Kahn brought to the town.
Yeah, super influential, and just what a blessing for us to have access to his brain.
And one of those, just like you said, he literally, it's when you speak to Rob, like you think to yourself, like, how does this guy put his pants on in the morning sometimes? And I love you, Rob, but you know what I'm trying to say. And I'm saying this in the context of, I'm kind of like that too. I'm saying this in the context of a truly genius mind. Like you wonder how he gets from point A to point B, but when you sit down and you start talking about jiu-jitsu, you see him kind of like, stare off into space and start thinking, and just the amazing amount of knowledge that just comes out of his brain. Like I've been a black belt for 4 years. I'm getting my professor stripes this next belt ceremony. And just watching Rob in a private lesson teach someone how to do something like the rear naked choke, I'm thinking to myself, wow, like that simple technique that I learned day one is like, there's an amazing detail that he showed me about pinning the shoulder down or the elbow in it that I was like, oh my, that makes my rear naked choke, something I've been doing forever, that much better, man.
Yeah, that happens all the time. Yeah. And speaking about, Nogi, Rob is see, at Eduardo's, it was all Ghee. They only had one Nogi class a week, and that was coincidentally Friday when I could not train. So for 2 years, I never trained without the Ghee, never saw anyone without it. And I remember going to Rob's, and half the people there were not in Ghees. So to me, they looked scary. I'm like, I don't know what these guys are. I assume they're all black belts. At the time, it was just so weird not seeing people in a uniform. And, you don't know what rank anybody is. And like, obviously when you started rolling them, for me, they just all murdered me. So I was like, oh, wow, this is interesting. But it was then when I realized that, like, you didn't have to wear a gi to do jiu-jitsu. And even though, like, a lot of people had very strong opinions on always rolling in the gi, and that was part of it, including Eduardo, I've always been someone that liked to think for myself. And, and I loved the gi at first because that's all I had done. So for a long time, I preferred rolling in the gi. So I did both at Rob's, but it didn't take long for me to shift that a little bit as I got better, because when you don't know any better, you just believe what people tell you. Right. So people would say things like, the gi is way more technical. And I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. It's obviously a lot more technical. And I would really have no fucking idea why I thought that or why they thought that. And then I would watch Rob teach some kind of a no-gi armbar, and I'd be like, fuck, that seems way more technical than anything I've ever seen. But if you don't know it, then, you're ignorant to it. I just didn't know what I didn't know.
So funny. That's that term right there is that's just like jiu-jitsu from like just about 2 months into your blue belt into about like 2 years into your purple belt. It's just like you don't really start to figure that out until you're close to getting your brown belt, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, I don't know shit. I'm making all these assumptions about things because I'm a purple belt now, so I
Yeah.
got this jiu-jitsu thing down. And you don't even know what you don't know yet. Like, because I'm a black belt and you're a black belt, and we still don't know what the hell is going on. We're still surprised every day. We learn every day, and we're open to things every day.
I've learned to stay open because all I can really talk is from my experience and what I've seen, and the few things that I figured out myself. But there's more. There's always going to be more. I mean, for a long time, nobody in Florida passed the guard standing up, ever. I'd never seen anyone do it. I learned from Rob. It was all pressure from the knees. Never. And then I took a private with Marcelo Garcia, and I rolled him, and he stood up to pass me. And I was like, oh, wow, my guillotine's gone. That's cool.
Right. Now nothing works anymore because I can't hold on to this guy anymore.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't running from me. He was engaging. He was just standing. And I'd never seen it. So, I picked that one thing up from that private lesson, call it the Marcelo Pass now because he showed it to me. But the whole system of how he passed standing, there was no real instructional from him. Everyone was so secretive of their moves back then. And, before that, it was like I didn't know that was an option. It seems so silly that I understand that now looking back, but always surprised from everyone.
Yeah, we kind of went through that little phase, that little period in time, and it seems like we're kind of getting past that, where it was like everyone kind of like different gyms had their little secrets, and you weren't allowed to cross train with other gyms, and you weren't allowed to do this, you weren't to do that. It's just silly. I mean, particularly now in the world of YouTube and instant gratification, social media, like you don't have any secrets anymore. Things are out there. I don't want to break your heart. You didn't invent anything in jiu-jitsu. You just kind of found a different way to express it.
Yeah, and for me, it works in the exact opposite. Like, if someone is very close to the vest with their moves and they release an instructional, I'm not buying it. I don't care. Right. But if that person had taught me something previously and I really liked it, and I thought it was very smart, and they release an instructional, I'm probably going to buy it because I already have had a taste. I already know it's good, and I want more of that. Whenever someone is free with information and it's good information, they probably have more good information. Like, I've been teaching a long time now, and I still buy damn near every instructional that comes out by anybody that's competing at an elite level. Even if I only get one thing from the DVD, I feel like it's worth my education. I spend the time looking at it so my students don't have to, but I like it. Like, I'm still learning every day from anywhere I can get info from.
Yeah, it's funny. You always see these little lame, articles and comparisons that talk about like what the different belts mean and how each pressure goes to a different spot. And like one of the things that I always thought about was what they talk about when they talk about black belt. And like, when you get your black belt, there's an odd feeling of freedom to it. Like you're no longer, because up until that point, all of your jiu-jitsu is about what can I do to achieve the next belt? What can I do to get that next stripe? And it's so focused, and it kind of like limits you and cornholes you into a particular position of saying, okay, like there's stress involved with that. But once you get your black belt, like you're just doing things because you love jiu-jitsu. You're going to get a stripe every 2 years. If there's nothing else to it no more, you're done now. You got to worry about that shit. Yeah. But you're doing jiu-jitsu now because like this is what I love. I just want to get better. I want to delve into this. I want to learn more about the processes and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I've given out quite a few black belts, and my students, they seem more freed now. They don't mind experimenting as much. They know that they're good. They're confident. I mean, yeah, it's awesome, man. It's definitely the first step in the journey, really. It always seems that way when you look back, but at the time, I really wanted that purple belt. I really wanted that brown belt, and I definitely wanted the black belt. Now I'm like, you'll get there. Everyone will get there. Like, it doesn't.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird how when you get that, there's like a feeling there, oh, wow, I'm a black belt now. It's amazing. You're proud of it because you know what it took to get there. You know the hell you had to get to it. But it's like, whatever.
Yeah, you're still going to have to be able to roll. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I still get caught by purple belts and brown belts. Blue belt maybe once or twice if I'm being lazy. But, an athletic blue belt that was a D1 wrestler sure as hell could catch me in a Kimura rear naked choke if I'm slipping. You got to pay attention. Black belt only controls protects 2 inches of your waist, right?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends what you care about. If you care about not getting tapped all year, I guess you're not letting anyone get a good position on you ever when you roll.
Right.
But for me, I'm trying to make my students better, and I need them to pass my guard. I need them to attack me and mount. So I play all those positions with everybody.
Right.
And we run drills for that exact reason every day. So I don't really care, much about get tapped, don't get tapped. When the day comes that, my students start catching me more often, I'm just going to be super proud of them. It's not like that's just going to make me feel good. Like, they're going to catch me at some point, of course. Like, they're all younger and they're learning from me. I'm not holding anything back. They get all the secrets. It's going to happen. I don't care. I just want everyone to keep learning, and I'm happy to be able to roll,
So you were a pretty big competitor for a while. You did MMA and you competed in the jiu-jitsu scene. You were out and about running that circuit for a long time.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's been so freaking long now. It almost seems like it didn't happen because so many more tournaments now than there were when I was competing. So everyone's like, have you done EBI? I'm like, that wasn't around then. It wasn't really a choice.
Right.
I saw or competed in was Grappler's Quest.
Yeah, exactly. The kids today with all these amazing opportunities to be, professional grapplers and shit, they don't understand the shit that like you had to go through. There was nothing. Like you had to go. You had a Copa in Lakeland. Like you had to, you get to drive to Jersey for Grappler's Quest or wherever the hell they had that.
And man, I always hated the tournament experience back then. I mean, it still sucks, but it's a little better now. But there were so many times where I was there at 9 o'clock, weighed in, and didn't compete till after 7 or 8.
Right.
Sitting on hard floor and coaching some of the time, like performed terribly. Even if I won, I didn't feel good about it.
Right. You just don't give a shit anymore. You're over. You don't care. You're like, I've been sitting here for fucking 7 hours. I don't give a shit anymore. 10 hours. I don't care anymore.
And I can tell you one of the main things that made me not want to do tournaments anymore was reffing. I started reffing tournaments for Top Cat for the MMAC tournaments, who runs a great tournament, by the way. I like those tournaments, but I don't like working them. Standing up all day, separating kids while the parents yell on one side, the coach on the other side, trying to make sure no one gets hurt. It really made me want no part of that scene for quite a while. And now I'm at a point where for me to go compete somewhere, it has to be away from my school, because otherwise all my students are going to compete, which means I have to coach them and worry about them, and I can't just be about myself. So I competed a lot back in the day, but I haven't in a long time, really. And I do miss it, to be honest. I absolutely would like to do another couple of jiu-jitsu matches. I'm definitely done doing MMA. I just don't feel like putting myself through the training that requires, But I love to roll. I don't have to do nothing else to do that.
I mean, you definitely options out there for you. You're a beast. I've rolled with you plenty of times. You're fucking tough as shit. I think about that. I've only really rolled with you twice, I think. And like as long as we've known each other, I think I've only rolled with you 2 or 3 times.
And I can never make it out to South.
Yeah, I know.
Pro training is so hard for me.
I literally live a 2-minute drive away from South, and everyone's always like, "Oh, come to Brandon, come here." It's like, dude, literally, I have to I can walk to the gym. Like, I ain't going nowhere else.
Same way. It's tough, It's tough to get out of my own little bubble. So when people show up, I roll them.
We're gonna get into the specifics of Ghee versus Nogi, but I'm enjoying this conversation with you.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the aspects of it, because jiu-jitsu competition is huge, and don't get me wrong, it's cool. There's a part of me that really enjoys working with Dan Martinez. I'm talking about working with guys that are going to go out there and blow it up on the competition scene, my younger purple belts and shit like that I know are competition minded or want to be UFC fighters. I enjoy helping them get to that next level.
Absolutely.
But there's also a joy that I get out of just the weekend warrior, dad that's got a couple kids, or 40-year-old construction worker or whatever, office worker that wants to come in and get things out of jiu-jitsu and enjoy the process. Tell me a little bit about that side of jiu-jitsu, and how maybe since you're not competing as much, maybe you're starting to think about those concepts in your school, because you can't all have athletes. Not every one of your students at your school is going to be a fucking
99% of my students are not fighters or avid competitors. They're just regular people that work at a marketing company or a hair salon, or an office, and they, end up falling in love with it and decide that's what they want to do. I remember, I'm going to leave the name of the students nameless for this, but there's been a couple times where I see someone there so often, and they're crushing it on the mat, all this energy, almost just like they need it. And I asked this person, before jiu-jitsu, what exactly did you do? Because you got a lot of energy you're getting out of yourself. So what did you run track? What did you do? They're like, a lot of drugs, mostly,
Yeah.
you know? So like for these people, like they ditched a habit that was terrible for them. And now they're being physical and they're so much happier. And that seems to be a common thing. Like once people, and they meet people, it's like a brotherhood. I would say it's not so much a cult like I feel like CrossFit is, because they're not like selling special shoes necessarily or anything.
Right.
But I do think that when people realize that everyone in the gym's not a fighter trying to kill them, and that all they're looking for is friendly ways to roll and get some physical exertion going with being competitive, man, they love it, and everybody loves it. And there's nothing that I like more than seeing somebody sitting on the bleachers after rolling 4 or 5 times, and they're exhausted and super happy with themselves, and they go home to whatever else they're doing. I feel like mission accomplished. You came in, you listened, you learned, you rolled, you're exhausted, you got your workout, and like you can feel good about that. I don't know what I would do if I couldn't roll or work out or something. Like I can't just sit at home doing nothing every day.
Drugs, probably. But
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. I heard something.
Have you tried drugs?
Yeah, right.
Have
Have you tried drugs?
Yeah.
First one's free. Just like the first private's free.
But yeah, I mean, I just love it, man. I like working with athletes too. Like right now, I have 2 guys that are wanting to fight as much as possible. Vishon and Mike. Vishon just won the 185 belt for Vigilant amateur MMA. He's a beast. And I have a couple other guys that want to try an MMA fight for the first time. But that's 4 people out of like 100. Everybody else isn't even on. They're just in the class, hitting pads and Muay Thai, having fun. Or they're there rolling, but they work hard. Everyone's not an athlete necessarily. They find something that's better than going to UFIT. It just is.
Yeah, I really, the more and more I've been involved as a teacher, like I still in the process of opening my gym. If I know it gives me shit, I promise you it's going to happen. It's already set. It's coming. But I've been teaching tons and tons and tons of private lessons. I do like all day long. And most of the people I teach private lessons to, it's not the fighters, they can't afford it. It's my local people that are just, hey, I don't know what this thing is. I want to learn something about jiu-jitsu. And, the more and more, because I'm old too, like my competitive days, it sounds real cool. It's cute, but I just don't care anymore. I don't want to go in there and roll with Dan, and I'm going super hard. And like halfway through it, I'm like, what in the hell am I even doing this for? But the point is that like I get a great satisfaction out of working with students that are just there, that really don't even realize what the great part of jiu-jitsu is, the transformation it's going to give him, the way that you're going to conquer your demons and become empowered and feel what the greatness of jiu-jitsu really is, the whole psychological process, the character building process. And, that process for me and working with guys like that, like I get such joy out of just watching guys not even know it's happening to them, but see them get more empowered. Watch a white belt, make it through a 5-minute round without getting tapped, and thinking to myself, like, remember 6 months ago when you couldn't go 45 seconds without throwing up in a garbage can, and now you just did 3 5-minute rounds. And hey, maybe you got caught once or twice, but you sure as hell know some things about jiu-jitsu, man. Like it's fun for me to see that.
Yeah, I love watching growth. I mean, like it's so rewarding for me seeing my students roll, get better, get promoted, show up more consistently. Their lives are better. Like it's just such a positive influence in everyone's life.
Yeah,
about how much less laundry they have if they don't do Ghee.
Right, exactly. So let's get into that. We spent a little time talking about like jiu-jitsu philosophy and stuff like that. It was cool because we have similar mindsets. I'm getting to the point now where I feel like I've been a black belt kind of long enough where I could start to see like I'm seeing the man behind the curtain. You know what I'm talking about? I don't have this whole like, oh, that's mysterious. Like I kind of get it. What's that?
Not mystical to you. You understand?
Yeah, exactly. I get it. There still is pieces of it, but I kind of feel like the magician now. I guess it's a better way to say it. Right?
Great way to describe it, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about Ghee versus Nogi. So obviously, I know for a fact you don't train the Ghee. Like I remember, actually you don't know this enough, but I remember seeing you at the original North School when you were training. I think you were still a blue belt when I had just wandered into the gym with Chris Reed one day, and you were training in your gi with Rob a long, long time ago. And then I never saw you again. And then now we're here. But tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that.
So gi to me is just an outdated version of jiu-jitsu. It's so much more boring to watch and to participate in. I don't enjoy slowing down things with just holding fabric. Like, to me, the only thing that you really need to roll in the gi is to understand how to do a lapel choke from a few positions and how to defend a lapel choke. That's basically it. The rest of it, if I were to put a gi on and roll, it would look just like my Nogi game, with the only exception being, if I have your back, I'm probably using the lapel as opposed to a normal rear naked. But I don't like the gi. I don't like, if people rolled in the gi the way they roll Nogi, I wouldn't care. It wouldn't even have an opinion on it. But they don't. It's not like they got a rash guard on or they don't. They roll the same either way. With the gi, they immediately shut down. They try all these specific moves that only work with grips on fabric. It's just stupid to me. Like, I'm over it. I did it enough. I don't want to do it anymore. As far as people that want to train in the gi, go ahead. I don't care. It doesn't sting me one way or the other if you prefer baseball or soccer or gi or no gi to me. But I don't feel that it makes you any better of a grappler. It's completely different. I will say that just about every single thing that you can do no gi, you can do wearing a gi also. But it's not true the other way around. And I know now that there is so much technique to rolling no gi as well. The way the grips are so different versus the gi grips, which there's technique to that too. It's just different. But one, I don't think is necessarily more technical than the other. They're both the same. It's just really, the difference is the way people use it. It's not like they're rolling the gi like they should. I mean, I've seen a lot of tournament matches. I'm sure you have too.
Yeah.
The fucking gi ones are hard to get through. Every time Zapata goes to do a tournament or Arroyo goes to a tournament, I always find the match and watch. And when it's in gi, even the people that I know to be really good and exciting, it bores me to tears, which tells me that it's not them, it's that damn gi. Right. Because you watch them without the gi, it's a way different match, like across the board. Because I know these people and I know how they look and how they roll, when I see them roll in a gi and it's completely different. And it's not even necessarily their fault. Like, it just takes one of them to be insistent on holding you. And so little happens. Like, I've never been a fan of rolling jiu-jitsu in a way where you're not connected or nothing's happening. So in no-gi, the only time that happens is when someone's staying away from you, afraid to engage, kind of like you're seeing people do with Gordon Ryan or anyone they're afraid of. They don't really want to go in there. So they're just running. Well, in the gi, like, you're connected, but you're holding. You're not doing anything. So I don't really like it. Like, I do say, like, I will appreciate some of the moves. Like, I like looking at like a cool clock choke or, all the different, things that can happen because the gi, like, they're cool, but it's just not for me. And another thing is, like, I had constant tendonitis in my elbows the entire time I trained jiu-jitsu at first until I stopped doing the gi. And it, like, all of a sudden is gone. Like, no more squeezing fabric to death made a huge difference. So not only did, like, it make it way easier to roll a lot more often, at first I felt much worse because, like, all the grips I was reliant on were gone. So I didn't feel like I had any attacks. Thankfully, Rob Kahn helped with that quite a bit. He was kind of the same way. He preferred not using the gi. And I remember Rob telling me that the way he started developing his head pressure system was because of the gi. Because in the gi, he was so vicious on the lapel by the neck, just always ripping and pulling, that without it, he decided to figure out a way to do that by grabbing and using pressure or shoulder pressure, basically. And so, like, it has plenty of purpose. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just different. It's not something that I want to bother dealing with. Like, even with kids, I'm not a fan of it. Like, I get that it's profitable, and from a business standpoint, it makes sense to buy gis for $30 and sell them for $100 and require everyone to have one. But man, I don't really want to do that. I've never been someone that really cared about that part of it, and I don't care. Like, I'm much happier seeing people in a team shirt or a rash guard or just whatever they feel like rolling in, honestly. And that's it.
What do you say to people that will tell you that rolling in the gi is more realistic to what self-defense oriented would be, because you're not going to roll, no one's going to attack you naked, and you've got grips to grab onto the pants, and if they're wearing a coat and all these other things like that.
Well, I think that's just false. But depending on where you live, maybe you can lean closer to that being a possibility. If it's always freezing and everyone's always in a coat or jacket, that would make sense. But that would also mean, if that's your argument, then you're training purely from a standpoint of self-defense. Well, that's definitely not most people. But it's always a nice bonus to think, oh, cool, I know how to defend myself a little better. But that's not the main value you're getting from exercising and training and learning jiu-jitsu. It's just not. So like, that's kind of a weak argument for the reason. But look at me. If you try to lapel choke me right now, you're going to rip my tank top.
Right.
I'm shorts. Like, if I were to get into an altercation walking in my car, there's no gi jiu-jitsu that's going to help anybody. Like, anyway, it's just not. We're in Florida. But again, if I was freezing all the time, maybe I'd prefer to roll in the gi if it made it easier on me. But I definitely don't think that it's more realistic. To me, it's way more realistic to expect someone to be in a rippable t-shirt, or tank top.
Yeah, I tend to that too. I was just thinking about some of the things that people would say and some of the discussions that people would say about that. When I think about the gi versus no gi debate, I have Arroyo once we train equal in both. We just always have. That's just the way we always have. Like, I've trained literally. I think maybe now it's more no-gi just because there's more competition for me in no-gi. So I was training more no-gi than that. But like, I would say that I have spent from day one equal time training in the gi as I have in no-gi. And some of the things that I've noticed because of that is the fact that my gi game is pretty much identical to my no-gi game. It's just a matter of, am I going to grab the hip, or am I going to grab the belt, or am I going to grab the collar, or am I going to grab behind the head, or am I going to grab the sleeve, or am I going to grab the wrist? There's not, with the exception of lapel chokes and a few other variations, fancy things and stuff like that. But what I see when I talk about guys that are, we're gi guys, when they make that discussion about the self-defense aspects, like the guys that say they are gi guys are the ones that are using like the lapel to wrap their foot around in some weird ass worm guard, or they're playing spider guard and things like that. Things that if you're in a self-defense position, like that's never going to happen anyway.
No, it's not. If you want to learn gi self-defense, you might as well learn judo.
Right, exactly.
And at least then you're going to toss somebody on their shit, which that's effective on cement. So
right, exactly. Knocking someone into the earth. What is the art of slamming the earth into someone or something like that was the way I heard you.
I wish to God I would have known in high school how much I was going to like grappling. I would have wrestled, but I never even considered wrestling. They had a team. I didn't even think I would ever like it. Never tried it. The second I started doing jiu-jitsu, I regretted that decision. Like, man, I really should have wrestled. Fuck.
I wrestled in high school. I was a pretty good wrestler in high school. I didn't start until like my junior year, but I finished 5th in the state my senior year. I was a pretty good wrestler. I enjoyed it. And then I wrestled kind of in college. I was like a walk-on-ish in college because so you could say I tell people I had that collegiate college background, but I was in a wrestling room in a college. We'll leave it at that. Right? But so the more and more I think about jiu-jitsu, and the more and more I read up on jiu-jitsu and the history of the art, is it's when you talk about the two sides of the same coin and how judo and jiu-jitsu really started from the same inception. It was just which people wanted to do more of the throwing aspect and which people wanted to do more of the groundwork aspect. I think it's techiwaza and nawaza are the two terms. So thinking along those lines, like one of my things that I've really thought about lately since I've learned that, and now I'm growing as a jiu-jitsu black belt just to learn more things, is to think about doing some judo, just because I feel like it completes the circuit. How do you feel about that?
I think it's great, man. I wish I had someone capable of teaching judo at my school. I would have it.
Right.
That would be a good conduit to having a gi to wear sometimes for some people. But I like judo. I like wrestling more for the same reason. That debate is the same to me. except without the gi, judo is nowhere near the same. I mean,
Right.
there might be some super elite people, very few, that can still easily toss you no gi, but almost every reasonable wrestler can.
Right. Yeah.
It's not even close.
If you take the gi off and you put a judo black belt versus like a high level wrestler, the wrestler's gonna get him.
Wrestling is so dominant. It just is. And, I'm a big fan of it. I like judo. I like how a lot of the throws look. I've spent some time with Roddy Ferguson. He used to train with me a bunch and traded me some judo stuff. And, I'm a fan of judo. I just haven't done a whole lot of it, especially not lately, mostly because I don't even know where my gi is. Probably still in my trunk. I'm not really sure. But I like to wrestle now, and I'm trying to start my matches on the feet. For a long time, the way we started training, there was no wrestling or judo. It was just you're sitting. And then when I started competing, I realized I don't know what to do standing up. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
And then like my first ever, eye-opening experience with wrestling was actually with Adam Cantor. And it was when he had first came to North. And he didn't realize, how fragile people were. He about speared me through the fucking wall. And I thought he was about to demo something. He just doubled me so fucking hard. I wanted to never wrestle again. But clearly the other thing that happened was I learned how to wrestle. But yeah, I remember thinking, wow, every time I think I have a fucking handle on this, there's some kind of other move I'm unaware of that just demolishes me. So I'm a big fan of wrestling and doing judo. And I like some of the throws, but I don't care much for the requirement of gi.
Yeah, I see, and it's funny you say that too, because in that regard, without the gi, I get the idea of judo as a concept, because I think about where judo and jiu-jitsu kind of broke and the sever between the two, and again the idea of this jiu-jitsu is really just judo, or judo is really just jiu-jitsu standing up, and then jiu-jitsu is really just judo on the ground, and that same kind of concepts. But in the grand scheme of things, wrestling is also the same conduit that judo is. Sure. Similarly, I think that the differences are slightly in the fact that judo is more about off balancing. There's more nuanced approaches to a judo position than there is to wrestling. But I don't know, if you ask a lot of wrestlers, they'll tell you differently too, that there's more nuance to that shit too. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. People think of it differently. To me, I'm a fan of all the arts like this, all the combat arts. I like boxing, I like judo, I like wrestling, I love jiu-jitsu. I mean, I'm a fan of everything. The only thing I'm not a fan of is the fake shit, like the karate schools and taekwondo schools. Yeah, obviously some of them have legit people, but most of them are just bullshit fucking places that just give you false confidence, and they're going to get you fucking beat the hell up. So I'm a fan of the real stuff that works. Boxing, it's legit. Muay Thai, legit. Judo, legitimate. Wrestling, legitimate. But, the other stuff,
Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk a little bit about what separates jiu-jitsu from other martial arts. And one of the things that I like to, obviously we could talk to death about the real thing that separates jiu-jitsu from martial arts, or from other martial arts, is the fact that we can go live 100%. We talk about that forever. That's always the real answer, because I don't care how many times, even, you're taking jiu-jitsu, or you're taking judo, or you're taking karate, or even like Krav Maga. I think there's some shit in Krav Maga you can learn that's amazing. But I don't care what level Krav Maga you're at. If you're practicing to take a knife out of somebody's hand, it's just not the same until they're trying to kill you with that knife. I see these guys doing all these cool little things. That's cool. Well, do it now, or I'm trying. Can you do that before I double leg you to the ground, take you to the ground, and choke you unconscious? Right. So the idea of attacking one another at full go, you just can't do that shit in karate. You can't kick somebody in the face, like you're putting your foot through a board every day. Right.
Whenever I'm teaching a women's self-defense class, which I do sporadically, I explain that if these women don't show up and start taking class, it's pointless. I couldn't imagine being shown a move, repping it a couple times, and then expecting that to be in there forever whenever I need it perfectly. You mean you're not doing it live with any practice ever? That doesn't seem fair.
No, it's not. It's not.
The backbone of most crappy martial arts schools.
Right. Well, and the reason being is because they don't want it to be live, because if they train it live, then someone's going to come in and expose it for being inadequate. And now they're out of money. So they lost the student.
Yeah. I mean, money's a big deal. You know, most karate schools do very well. They're daycare for kids mostly. I mean, that's how they make the money. They eventually grow up and maybe get some adult students, but nowadays it's like, I did that as a kid.
Right.
Yeah. Well, your mom put you in what she didn't know the difference. Can't even blame her really, because it wasn't too long ago that nobody knew the difference. Like everything was a martial art. It didn't matter.
And, you know, there's aspects of these more traditional martial arts. You know, any martial art you take, you're going to learn discipline. You're going to learn the idea of goal retainment and things like that. You're working hard, and you learn your kata and you get your next belt. But the idea of learning, nothing is worthless, because I always say this: if you could put your fist through a brick, like if I'm in the wrong place at the right time, you're going to kill me with that punch if you hit me just right with it. You know, but the idea is being able to do
punch
that.
At all is way better than not having learned that.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, again, anything's better than nothing. If your choice is sign up at the karate school or play video games and sign up nowhere, you should do something physical. Go ahead.
Right.
You know.
Exactly.
But to me, I never found anything more real than jiu-jitsu. The rolling and just the being connected part, where you get to feel different body types and the way people resist. It's just so dynamic. You know, it's nothing like working against air, where it's nothing, you know. Dealing with another human's strength, different levels of nervousness and tenseness, and it's just amazing. There's just so much to grappling and jiu-jitsu that I love.
Yeah, it's so much like the intuitiveness. I always think about that. Like there's like when you roll, particularly when you roll with anybody, but like when you're rolling with another high level like practitioner, there's this feeling of not only am I trying to execute moves, but I am intuitively connected to you and understanding a way of, okay, cool. I know I can't just grab a Kimura and rip a Kimura on bamboo. I have to kind of feel for when he's going to be in the right place. So there it is. And maybe I'm setting a decoy over there. I'm understanding the decoy that he's setting for me. So I'm moving back and forth. Like I have to know your personality. There's so much to it, man.
Yeah, very satisfying when that works out.
Yeah.
And even when it doesn't work out, I can appreciate how I got beat.
Right, 100%. There's something about that that's amazing. It takes so long to get to that point, but when you finally do, when you can look at someone and be like, "Wow, dude, like that was really fucking cool. Like you caught me off guard and set that up. That was really amazing that you were able to do that." It's such a cool feeling to be able to do that.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So I got one more for you. I know you got to get going. I got one more cool question to kind of keep things along the same line, because this is kind of an interesting take on the same concept of, you know, jiu-jitsu, what separates jiu-jitsu from other martial arts. And one of the things I learned, by the way, I'm reading Robert Drysdale's new book, Open and Closed Guard. If you haven't read it yet, it's fucking amazing. Like all this new shit I'm thinking about. I know you like to read, bro.
I do, yeah, I'll check it out.
So good, dude. It's so good. I'll send you a link later to look into it. So one of the things I think about when I think about jiu-jitsu, and this comes from the book, is the idea that, you know, when you think of other more traditional martial arts, even particularly judo, which is still effective, but there's such a strict, dogmatic approach to this has to be done like this every single time, because this is the way Master Kano described it, you know, 150 years ago, and now you're going to do that because that's the way my instructor, and this is the way judo works, and that's it. There's no other implications, no other ways that things could change, right? And when you think about jiu-jitsu, you think about, like, you know, the laid-back Brazilian kind of like surfer dude, or the Americans that say, screw the gi, I don't want to train the gi, fuck the gi. Why do I got to train the gi? I don't give a shit. You follow what I'm talking about? Like, there's the freedom to be creative on your own. And yes, I may show an armbar one way, you're going to show an armbar one way, you know, Rob's going to show an armbar the other way. It's still the same armbar, but it grows and adapts on its own because it doesn't have that dogmatic approach. Like, tell me about how you feel about those things in terms of jiu-jitsu.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think I've ever thought about that too much, but what you said was exactly on point. They're used to, like most other martial arts are exactly that. Like, I tell you how to do it. This is the way, this is the art, this is how you do each move. Jiu-jitsu, especially, like, even the way I teach it now, I'm real big on, you know, you have to show me. I'm not just going to believe. You have to show me that your move works, or this block is going to beat my move. I'm not. If it does, then we problem solve. So when someone says, "Well, I like to do the armbar this way," what do you think of that? I'm like, well, is it working for you? Great. I have no problem with it. I'll still count that as an armbar because you're doing it. It doesn't have to be the same. And you're right. The little bit of judo that I have learned from Roddy and things, it was always like there was no room for my opinion or my variation. It was exactly that way. Jiu-jitsu has never been that way for me. Everyone's understands body types are different. People react differently, and there's more than one way to do it. And man, I'm still figuring that out. I'm still finding new ways to do things that I did a different way before that was already successful. So man, it's awesome. And I think that's a rarity. Not a lot of martial arts could even work that way.
Well, and when you think about in the context of why jiu-jitsu is, what I believe, I'm sure you believe, the best martial art for self-defense that there is, probably the greatest martial art on the planet. It's because it allows for that growth, and there's nothing, when you think about even the highest levels of thought, you think of guys like Stephen Hawking or dudes that are, that are really at the forefront of intellectual pursuits. Like those are guys that are rebels. Those are guys that were saying, you know what, like, yeah, that's the way Isaac Newton did it, or the way whatever thinker of that generation did it. But like, I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to go off of that. And maybe Isaac's right, and maybe I can use aspects of what he's showing to make it right. But I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to allow this to become a living organic organism. And when you think about jiu-jitsu in the early days and how the Gracies held off from judo to say, screw you, and I'm not doing fucking judo. I'm going to keep doing jiu-jitsu. I don't give a shit about standing. I'm going to stay on the ground. We don't need your shit. I'm going to do my shit. And right or wrong, you know what I mean? That's how the sport grew, and that's how it evolved, and it continues to evolve because we don't have that, stifling whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, jiu-jitsu was that way when I first started, with Eduardo. He wouldn't let you ask a question to anyone else. No other students showed moves, only him, only his way, exactly his way. It wasn't until I met Rob that my eyes got open, that it didn't have to be that way. Like, I literally credit Rob with so much. Like, all of my growth and my ability to think and, problem solve through positions came from him, because I literally believed beforehand that it was done this way, just like you're saying. Thankfully, it's so popular now, and there's so many Americans that have added more things to what the original Brazilian style was. It's become where you can grow, but it definitely wasn't always that way. Not to me, because nobody was allowed to question anything at first. It was so weird. It was like we had the king there, and like that was it.
That's right. It depends on what. Like, there's so much into it. There's the Gracie Barra guys. They follow Carlos's kind of doctrine, which is more like focused and this and that. And then you got the Haleo guys. They're a little more like, we just do whatever we do. And it's so funny. Like, read that book. I'm telling you, man, you'll enjoy it as someone that really loves jiu-jitsu. It's the historical aspects of it are amazing, but it helps you kind of understand how the sport evolved and how the rebellious nature of what jiu-jitsu became against all these other old school traditional martial arts, and say, you know what, screw you. I'm going to do what I want to do. That's the way it works, and how it evolved into what it is today.
All right. I'll check it out for sure.
Well, dope, man. I know you got to get going, man. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut it here. I had a few more questions, but whatever. But we're good, man. Go do your thing, dude. I'll see you around sometime. We'll talk about it. Yeah. So real quick, man, guys, thank you so much. We had Joe Bamboo Wissman. One of my black belt brothers from Gracie Tampa network. He's an awesome dude. Had a lot of fun, man. Stay tuned. Keep reading some articles, and we'll check in with you later, man. Take it easy, guys.
All right. Later.